From Pocketnow.com, this is Pocketnow Weekly.
Hello, and welcome to episode 017 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from Pocketnow.com, where we discuss what's hot and what's cool in the world of mobile technology, Windows, Android, iPhone, and sometimes even BlackBerry. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, senior editor at Pocketnow, and I'm joined by our managing editor, Anton D. Nagy. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning around the world, and good morning, post-elections USA.
Yes, indeed. And by our Android guy, the man with the chicken coop, Joe Levi. Good morning to you.
Good morning, me and my 9 hens who lay eggs for me every day. I'll say hello.
I absolutely love it. I love that you... Joe and I had a conversation off online the other day, and Joe is like, I'll help you out with this HTML5 thing, but I got to go out and finish building this chicken coop. And I'm like, that is so far removed from my experience that I want to hear more about that pretty much every day. So, Joe, I can't wait to have lunch with you, like you recently had with a fan, right?
I did. I got to go out to lunch with a fan from Poland and his father and his father's friend. We went out, ironically, for Indian food, since they're from Poland, and I'm part Native American, right? So I guess there's our Indian tie over.
Hey,
right?
I didn't know you were a Native American brother of mine. Hey, man. I wonder if...
Absolutely. I'm half Paiute. I got to use my Paiute tribal ID card to vote.
Whoa. I'm only an eighth, so I have no room to speak. But, that's still always nice to meet a former member of the North American community.
This American Polish...
Fellow member.
I mean, the first North American community.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What were you saying, Tony?
This American Polish Indian international lunch reminds me of our time back in Berlin when an American, a Romanian in Germany went to an Italian restaurant.
Yeah. Yes, and of course the Romanian, as was his wont, spoke Italian. And speaks every language under the sun.
It's close. Italian is close to Romanian.
As well, it was great. Well, anyway, I shall look forward to meeting you someday, Joe, in person and seeing your chicken coop. And I will bring my CommBadge collection to you.
That'd be awesome. We're going to talk about that later in the episode.
We are going to talk about that a little later in the episode. But first, let's jump into our Brandon Miniman named Thought Thread. Brandon is off today, but his Thought Thread remains, as it always does, at the top of the podcast. We had a story recently, actually written by Joe, and mentioned to me by Tony that we should probably talk about on a podcast, about the new DMCA smartphone and tablet exemptions. These are legal parameters that govern licensing, if you're not familiar, listeners, for music and digital content. Joe, the first subhead of your article says, what does any of this have to do with smartphones and tablets? You said it better than me. Fill us in on what's going on here.
Well, a little bit more background. This is something that I wanted to talk about, and I had to fight Steven for it. In fact, we had it split up, so we were going to do a collaborative article, but some hurricane or something nixed that. So you just got my perspective. The DMCA, a lot of people think that the DMCA is just an American thing. It's just U.S. And yes, It is a U.S. law. It stands for the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It was actually sponsored, introduced, and ramrodded through the Senate by my very own Senator, Orrin Hatch, out here in Utah.
Really?
You got to be so proud.
Oh, I am. He said that he was doing this for the recording artists because he was one, because he writes music and has like 2 or 3 albums that really are not that great. But it was for him and his family and people like him in the state of Utah. Okay. But this applies not only to us in the States, but also to our international friends, because the DMCA was essentially the roll-up of 2 treaties that came from the World Intellectual Property Organization, which I politely call the WIPO. And so they rolled up these international treaties into U.S. law. It's not the legal way to do things in the U.S., but we're not going to talk politics. Okay. What this does, essentially, is it takes the Copyright Act, which we've had since way back in 1976, which essentially says you can't copy stuff that's not yours and sell it, make profit with it, use it without the owner's consent, except in these very few fair use scenarios.
Right.
You know, if it's personal use, if you're making a personal backup or an archive, if you're using it for education, for example, that's fair use. Or if you're making a parody, that's where we got Weird Al Yankovic from, because it's parody, it's funny, all fair use. The DMCA tried to apply that, or tried to bring the Copyright Act into modern technologies, into an internet era where people were, well, this came about mainly because of Napster and Kazaa and LimeWire and all those other sharing sites where you'd rip your music to MP3, share a folder, and then anyone in the world could download your version of, you know, Metallica's Enter Sandman. And, well, then at that point you were distributing content that you didn't have a license to distribute. It wasn't yours to give away. You know, you're giving away a copy of it. So this law applied to that. Unfortunately, there's a little teeny bit that said, not only can you not copy stuff, you can't break any type of an encryption schema.
Right, encryption, which normally would prevent copying, yeah.
It attempts to.
Yeah.
But not only that, you couldn't even attempt to circumvent that encryption schema.
Right.
Now, that means all of our DVDs and all of our Blu-rays, which we didn't have when this passed, but we do now, all of those are encrypted. So if you want to make a backup copy to, I don't know, put on your Windows 8 tablet now, or your Android or your iPhone, well, you can't do that because you're breaking an encryption schema. So how does that apply to smartphones and tablets? Smartphones and tablets usually come locked from the manufacturer. So attempting to lock that is arguably unlawful.
Or attempting to unlock it?
To unlock it.
Yeah, attempting to unlock that lock, yes. So that wasn't a problem when the Librarian of Congress carved out a little exemption for smartphones a couple of years back and said, hey, we agree you should be able to unlock your smartphone so you can take it to another carrier or install other apps on it or whatnot. So Librarian of Congress carved out an exemption for us. Everything was great. Well, since then, we've had tablets come, and that exemption didn't apply and still doesn't apply to tablets. And now they've revamped the whole thing all over again. Librarian of Congress says, yes, unlocking phones is just fine, but only until January 2013. After that, no more unlocking.
What, is it up for a vote after that, or is it just forbidden after that? I mean, what's the deal?
It is just forbidden after that until it comes up for review again, and I believe it's every 3 years, every 4 years that they come up for review.
So wait, there's a world that might exist in the near future where unlocking your phone is unlawful because you're breaking encryption?
And that world exists for every smartphone purchased after January of 2013.
Well, that would be not any fun at all. I like there's a point, listeners, if you haven't read the article, where Joe makes the analogy that we're getting to the point where ownership is nothing more than a license to use, and that license can describe how and where we use what we've purchased. It's like saying you can't use the milk you bought to bake bread and make a sandwich from it. Instead, you have to buy your sandwich from someone licensed to sell you one.
That is not true, and I will disagree with you.
All right, now Tony, I know you had a lot to say on this.
Yeah, I have so many things to say. I don't know where to begin, but let's begin with your particular example. I know the main comment everybody will bring up is that I purchased the phone is mine, I should be able to do with it whatever I want. Now we have to make a difference between the phone itself, which is the object, the plastic, the glass, and the software. While you definitely own the plastic, the object itself, you do not own the software. As with most licensing terms, the software is not your property. The software is their copyright owner's property, and you have the right to use that particular software under the terms of the end user license agreement. So your particular example does not apply with the milk. I understand what you're trying to say, but in this particular case, we are looking at an intellectual creation, an intellectual work, which is yours to use. For instance, when you go to a hotel and you check in for 3 nights, you have the right to use the room, but you have no property rights on any objects within that room. So this is for that part of the discussion. Now, I know that people want to do hacks and tweaks and mods and stuff like that. Uh, Let me start this off with an example. There's your phone and there's your software, and there's this thing which is the security, which is either the bootloader or the lack of rooting capabilities, which is the barrier between you and the software. Let's imagine this: when you go and try to break in to your neighbor's house, you open the door, you don't enter his house, you don't steal anything from his house, you're still committing a crime. Even attempting to open a door which is not yours with a key is also a crime. So in this particular example, attempting to unlock a phone is or was considered a crime de facto. So the key takeaway here, how should I put this into both non-legal terms and English, that we can get back always, and we need to get back always to the fair use of the intended software. What is fair use? A user can only unlock his phone under the limits of the fair usage. The phone was not intended to be tinkered with in terms of flashing ROMs. Android might be an open source and free up to an extent software bit, but it is in any case protected by an end user license agreement. So if you have any comments on what I just said up until now.
I'm well out of my depth, Joe.
Well, and I agree. The statement that I was making about baking the bread was, obviously an extreme edge case, but it seems to be the direction that we're heading. With Android particularly, once I have my hardware, unless it's the Geeks phone, which is meant to be running custom ROMs on it, but once I have that, it essentially is just a computer in my pocket. I should be able to do as I please, and this is where our opinions are going to diverge. If I want to, for example, my desktop computer, if I want to install Windows 7 on it, I can.
As long as you have the license
for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. If I want to install Linux on it, I can. If I want to write my own operating system and put it on it, I can. With my Android-powered device, if I want to run CyanogenMod on my Galaxy Nexus, I can.
That's that's where you can't, because CyanogenMod is a version of Android which is not covered by your license agreement. When you purchase the Android phone which you are holding right now, a fraction of the price of that phone was the license of the software, and the costs for other licenses between Microsoft and the OEMs, Microsoft or any other trademark owner, and Google. So that particular fraction of the price does not apply to another copy of Android, which is, in my opinion, illegal within CyanogenMod.
For the Google Apps part of the discussion, not the operating system, you're correct. For the AOSP, Android, the operating system, is open source. It's available for anybody who wants to get it and build a copy and put it on their device. CyanogenMod went the rounds with Google and eventually came to a nice settlement and said, yes, you're just fine distributing Android as CyanogenMod, but you cannot distribute the Google apps, or GApps as I like to call them, because you haven't bought a license for that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So as far as that goes, yes, I can put that on my device unless, and this is where the DMCA comes in, unless my device manufacturer, whether on their own or at the requirement of their carrier, has locked that bootloader so that they are trying to prohibit me from doing that. Arguably, that is circumventing a quote-unquote copy protection scheme, which I still don't think it is, to try and put something else on it.
That's what is interesting to me about this whole thing, that there's this copy protection scheme argument has been applied to something. It was originally written for to protect copyright, to protect creative content, not necessarily operating systems, but it has been applied seemingly across a great divide to operating systems, and I don't know why that is and why that's possible.
Let me tell you why.
It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Please tell me why.
As Joe implied, Android, yes, it is free when we're talking about pure vanilla Android as Google intended it to be. But when you purchase a phone from any and every OEM out there, that's not vanilla. You get Samsung/HTC/Motorola copyrighted materials on that, whether we're talking about the launcher, an application, or anything which was baked into that operating system. And the bootloader locking procedure is protecting that bit of copyright on your phone.
Well, I get that. I mean that. Yeah. I would like to. I think that you guys have made some awesome points in each camp. I tend to get very, very cautious when I'm dealing with this kind of stuff because it's just so. It's confusing. It is also one of those matters that is confusing, but it's also really easy to get indignant about it because you're being told how to use something that, whether it's legally true or not, yes, you feel like you bought, and you should be able to drive your car that you bought where you want. Or whatever. That's a stupid analogy. It's early in the morning.
That is true, but I just want to say something.
Please, well, wrap it up. That's what I was getting into. I would like you guys to each have a minute to wrap up.
I don't want to minimize the law itself because that's what I've learned. That's what I know what to do, and I know how to respect the law. But we have a saying here in Romania. I'm going to only tell you the translation, and it goes like this: an uncaught thief is an honest seller or somebody, an honest commerciant. So the thing is, until you're not caught, you can do whatever you want. All those people who are downloading torrents and sharing music and stuff, all the illegal stuff, are not behind bars. So there's no police which is looking actively whether you jailbreak your phone at night on your computer or not. I think the bigger picture here is that when an OEM or a carrier decides to lock a phone, it is because they don't want to deal with the post-hacking support when somebody or something which they apply goes wrong, and then everybody asks for a refund or a replacement of the unit itself. Beyond the typical copyright protection discussion or idea.
Joe, do you have a final thought there?
Yeah, I think that we're definitely going in a direction that I don't think is the best direction for us to be headed. If I buy, again, my computer and want to, even if it comes with Windows preloaded on it, and I've paid a license for something that I'm not going to use because I'm going to throw Linux on it, I should be able to do that. No one should be able to take that capability away from me, whether technologically or lawfully. Whatever the law says, that just ain't right. So as soon as, and being kind of a gun guy on the side, one of the sayings in that camp is, if you make it a crime to own a gun, only criminals will own guns. So if you make it a crime to root and put custom ROMs on your phone, well, then only criminals are going to do that because you've made it a crime. It inherently isn't damaging anyone. To Tony's point, if I brick my phone and I try and take it back for warranty replacement, they got ways of telling, you know what, you unlocked the bootloader, you voided your warranty doing that. That was the chance that you took. That was the assumption of risk that you took. And in every one of our articles where we talk about doing that, step 0 is always assume the risk. You might break things here. Doing it right, doing it wrong, aliens coming down and doing something to your phone in your sleep, whatever the case may be, you're taking that chance because it's yours to take that chance with.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say here, and I'm going to wrap it up right now just with this last observation, is that they are trying, and I think rightfully trying to stop people from, and I'm going to give you just an example from the top of my head, to port, I don't know, TouchWiz from a Samsung device to an HTC device, or stopping them from porting Nokia Drive from a Lumia 920 to an HTC Windows Phone 8X. So this is probably the amount and the exact protection which they are trying to impose.
Agreed, absolutely. But using that same logic, we need to outlaw copy machines because you can copy books with them.
Absolutely.
There is that, and VCRs as well, which started off this whole copyright discussion, really, or Betamax machines in the 70s.
Yeah, we could go on forever.
We could go on. We could have a whole podcast about this, and I would probably not stay awake throughout it. I love hearing. I do love hearing the discussion. I think it's very important to the future of the industry. We will be covering more of this stuff as it happens. I mean, Joe, considering your input regarding when this stuff comes up for votes and certain expiration dates on some of this stuff, I don't think we've heard the last of this particular specific portion.
Oh yeah, and we didn't clear up didn't answer the question why tablets are not exempted from this. Is, if I'm reading this right, is that and I'm going to quote from the document, if I can find the quote itself, is that the register found significant merit to the opposition's concerns that disrespect of the purposed class was broad and ill-defended, as a wide range of devices might be considered tablets, notwithstanding the distinctions among them in terms of the way they operate, their intended purpose, and the nature of the applications, blah, blah, blah.
Happened. I just fell asleep. It just happened.
Yeah, so the basic idea is that they are not allowing tablets because the tablet is a broad concept, and you can consider tablets, both the iPad, which could be jailbreakable, but also an ebook reader, which if you could jailbreak, you could then infringe on copyright of its contents, which in this case are books.
Right, but it's running the same OS as a smartphone. This is why we have so much trouble with
yes, but the intended
categories.
Purpose is different. So it's all about the intended use.
Sure,
the intended use is different,
which is just ridiculous to me. I mean, it's like I run into a storefront and I do property damage with a Mazda Miata, or I do it with a school bus. I should be charged the same regardless. I don't know. Whatever.
You know what? Actually, in this particular example, you probably will not.
No, you're probably right. I don't. You know what's funny. You know what's a key sign of me not fully grasping the concepts is that I make bad analogies. I think the most interesting thing about this to me, like this is the most interesting part about it. We still don't know how to treat tablets. In a legal sense,
yeah.
In a literal sense. I mean, there's still this kind of product that not a lot of people get. Millions and millions of people own them, but broadly, we don't really know what they are. Still.
And to continue my quote, exactly to confirm what you're saying, and the quote from the same document, for example, end quote, an ebook reading device might be considered a tablet, as might a handheld video game device or a laptop computer.
Right.
Unquote.
So, yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
So the reason for that, as I'm reading all the legal mumbo jumbo, and listeners, we do this so you don't have to. Imagine all the hours that went into researching this so you don't have to. You can thank us later. But the reason for the exemption, or at least the temporary exemption for smartphones and not tablets, was for being able to move your phone to another carrier. It was carrier portability. If I go out and buy an iPhone, for example, and I want to use it on T-Mobile,
on a different carrier, yeah,
I can do that. And in fact, I can still do that until January 2013.
You will be able to do that even after that if the carrier agrees.
If the carrier agrees. And that is also specifically outlined. If you want to unlock for the purpose of portability your smartphone, or any phone really, to another carrier, you have to do it at a carrier. So,
and the carriers shouldn't be able to refuse you on this because the intended purpose of usage is the same. You have the freedom to move your product to any service provider in the world. So,
well, I don't know. You see, now that's an argument I don't know if I agree with, because if you're a carrier, I understand that it's stupid and it's really annoying when a carrier's like, no, we won't support that device on our network because we haven't tested it, and it's a total BS excuse. They don't want to spend the customer service hours necessary to support you on an unsupported device. They don't want to train there. So there's a whole lot of reasons that they do it. But, if you own a business, even if it is a massive conglomerate with a nationwide wireless network, you should be able to say, I don't want that on my network. And, if I want to be a crotchety old dude about it, then I'm going to be. You know what I mean? Like, that's you should be able to do that if you want to be. If you want to be a jerk, you should be able to
but it's not about the second carrier accepting the phone. It's about the first carrier letting the phone go.
Oh, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I agree.
exactly.
Yeah. Can we talk about something else?
Yeah, something more exciting. And
Please,
hopefully,
please,
guys,
absolutely.
Thank you.
wake up. If you fell asleep, wake up.
Oh my
Now
God.
is the real deal.
I'm gonna put time codes on all these. No, seriously. But it is important. I don't mean to minimalize it. It's just really, really, really dense. But on exactly.
Well, it's
17
it
of my tab.
strikes at the heart that, I mean, look at this. Our elected officials, our appointed officials, don't get technology. It's up to us
Right.
to be vocal and to let them know, hey, you guys, this is just crazy. And we're going to educate. We're going to do that as part of our charter at Pocket Now. And it's not going to be as long and boring as we've just made it sound.
Well, and depending on where your interests lie, this will either be just as boring or exactly not as boring. I had an opportunity yesterday to talk to a guy.
I know what you're talking about.
I know, yeah.
I'm gonna just weigh in when you finish this with one sentence, and I'm gonna let you
I was
guys
gonna
talk.
say Tony's gonna go have himself a sandwich and come back when we're done.
But only if he's licensed to do so from the milk.
Correct.
Exactly. No, I had an opportunity to talk to a gentleman yesterday called Charles Crimstock, who is an inventor and technology advocate who makes his home in California, and who asked himself the simple question one day because he hates Bluetooth headsets, and he said, "Why can't I just wear a speakerphone? I use the Siri in my car all the time because I have a Bluetooth connection in my car. I would like to be able to have that utility out and about without having to hold my phone, but I hate Bluetooth earpieces." Now, ordinarily, I think that's an interesting idea, but it wouldn't have been as interesting if he hadn't also said at the same time, why don't I call it CommBadge, and why don't I draw my inspiration for this wearable speakerphone from the small communicator badges worn on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and that caught my attention. So I wanted to know who was behind this tiny speakerphone that you wear on your shirt or you wear on a lanyard. So I contacted him. He was gracious enough to give me an interview, and we talked for a good long while about where the idea for CommBadge came from and how he's trying to raise money for it and all this kind of stuff. So the article is up on the site right now. It went up this morning. Listeners, if you want to check it out, you should. The product is called CommBadge, CommBadge, and Charles is trying to raise $100,000 on Indiegogo, and we'll see if he makes it or not. But I know what Tony thinks about this, and Joe, I feel like I might know what you think about this because you are the only, well, besides Steven, you're the only other real Star Trek fan on the team. Oh no, and Adam too. He wears a
Adam's got a uniform.
Adam's got a Commander
He's got
Riker
his own
uniform on his face. All right, sorry, Adam, I didn't mean to.
Let me just say my one sentence, and then you guys can
Tony
talk.
can't even wait. Just like what is this BS? Go ahead, Tony.
So I was literally asking Michael this morning about this badge thing, and I'm like, okay, I don't want everybody to listen in on my calls. I prefer my standard Bluetooth headset. And Michael was like, okay, dude, you don't get it. It's the Star Trek thing. And I was like, okay, I've never seen an episode, so it's probably got to be a US thing. And that's all my take on this. So you guys knock it out.
It's a little bit. So okay, so for voice communication, I agree. That's one of the things that we all thought was cool in the late 80s, early 90s when we were watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's like, oh, sweet, the communicator is part of their badge. But every one of your calls is a speakerphone call, we started thinking as this logic sort of infested our brains. It's like, wow, would you really want to have all your calls just kind of heard out loud? And yeah, of course, that's a negative aspect to it, and you're just going to annoy so many people, so many more people than even the push-to-talk aficionados of about a decade ago did. But the emphasis that Charles really, really points to Siri and like digital assistants and stuff, and it's less about, for him, it's less about conversations and more about let's use the voice features of Google Now and Siri and similar services, and so that you don't have to take your phone out of your pocket as often. And so in that way, it's kind of, and I wish I'd said this in the article, it's kind of like a Pebble smartwatch or a smartwatch for your ears. You know what I mean? And instead of, but it's not this Borg-like Bluetooth headset you have to plug into your head. I basically think it's a cool idea. I think more choice in communication is cool, which is why I think it's good, and it's why I hope it takes off. Besides the fact that I'm a nerd, Joe, can you put aside any of your Star Trek feelings to have a real opinion on this, or are you going to be like me and just kind of try and justify it no matter what because you want a badge that talks to you?
I'll hold my geek back a little bit. I've got 3 things that come to mind when I'm looking at this. First of all, for those of you who are thinking, hey, I don't want my conversations made public by wearing this speakerphone, if you're using Bluetooth, you're already doing it. If you're using your phone in public, we can hear you. We know what you're saying. We can hear half of the conversation already.
Which is more annoying
This just
than
lets us
hearing
in
the
on
entire
the other half. No big deal.
Good point.
Move on. The second observation that I have is my kids in elementary school, and I believe across the street at the junior high as well. I've got a junior high aged kid. It's scary. They all wear these things, which go to the article. If you're not there right now, go to the article and look at it. This is a nice round, somewhat thick compared to the Star Trek Communicator badge.
Right, but
little thing that you clip on your shirt.
It's tiny.
Oh yeah, it'll get smaller. Technology's going to bring it smaller.
I mean, it is. It's already
at my
pretty
kids'
small.
school. They have this much larger thing that they wear on a lanyard around their neck that also incorporates their photo ID and whatnot, their smart chip to let them in the doors. But that is an internal communicator that they use throughout the school. So instead of pushing a button and talking over the loudspeaker into the classroom, Mrs. So-and-so, so-and-so's dad is here to pick him up, they can push a button and talk immediately with the thing around the teacher's neck.
Oh, that's
so they can
awesome.
immediately get a hold of them, whether they're in the classroom or on the playground or
it's like
wherever.
One of those Vocera VoIP communicators that you wear on your lapel. Are they powered by Wi-Fi or something?
Probably a big old battery in the back of it. I don't know.
No, yeah. So go ahead.
But my third observation goes to something that a friend of mine just came back from China, and of course, when you're in China, you see all of these cool devices that aren't in the U.S. And one of the things that they brought back was a GSM cell phone watch. And it's a big honkin' watch, but it's no bigger than this CommBadge is. And it's a full cell phone inside a watch housing.
Yeah.
Reception is probably pretty crappy. And it made our wall of shame at work, where we have all of our old, crack-damaged, non-functional cell phones, because production quality wasn't that great, and it doesn't hold a charge.
Yeah.
So it was a one-time use cell phone watch brought back from China. But
Sure.
we can do that with the phone itself. It doesn't have to be a Bluetooth accessory. We can do it with the phone itself.
Yeah, but as you say, there's a lot of trade-offs there. Like, I mean, we can do it. I've seen those cell phone watches. I've seen fully self-contained phones that are the size of CommBadge, and it's like, wow, this is like a testament to why trade-offs are really sucky. Because it's just like a product built on the shoulders of compromise. But there's certainly compromises to CommBadge as well. But I like I like what it says about our capacity to continue innovating, especially in the framework of innovation is continuing to the point where things that we wanted, things that we may have wanted as kids, are now coming true to an extent. And of course, if you want to nitpick, you can point out all the differences and all the shortcomings of real-life products compared to their fictitious counterparts. But it's really nice to see that we can still enjoy fantasy becoming reality.
Absolutely. I just see one thing, as Joe saw 3 things, I just see one thing is this guy walking down the street, and he's like, I don't know, tapping the button on the Comcast thing, and he says, hey Siri, do I have any messages? Beep, beep. You have one message from the lady. And he's like, read it to me. Beep, beep. And then it's like every word which we cannot include here because of the clean tag.
Inappropriate, yes.
And the entire street and everybody who's running alongside and stuff like knows what the wife is preparing. So that's the only thing which I don't really get. But yeah, it's cool. Probably I'd never use it, but as you guys say, you would probably be amped on it. And I have to congratulate this guy for pushing this forward. Innovation is always welcome, whether guys like me like it or not. But props to him.
And your objections are definitely worthwhile, and it's not for everyone. I think, as I said in the article, it's definitely a niche product, but I think it stands a pretty good chance of of being cooler and certainly more geek chic than Bluetooth headsets.
So my wrap up on this.
Yeah,
I've just got to say, everybody do us all a favor and go out and buy this product if you have a Bluetooth headset that you use, because it'll save all of the schmucks like me who are at the grocery store, and here you are talking on your Bluetooth phone, and I don't know that, and I think you're talking to me, so I'm having a conversation with you.
and then they turn their heads, and you see it in slow motion. It's like you see the flashing
I'm on a
blue.
Bluetooth call.
Yeah, they've actually done some scientific studies, or at least one scientific study, which shows that the average person is significantly more annoyed by overhearing a phone call than they are at overhearing a conversation, because when you only hear half of a conversation, your brain has to work harder to try and extrapolate what is going on in the conversation.
Yeah, but
even
it's
if you're
none
doing
of
it
your
subconsciously.
business.
No, but of course it's not your business. So don't sit right next to me on the bus like talking about your business. You know what I mean? Like it's not that we're sitting there eavesdropping. It's that your brain is unconsciously hearing one side of the conversation, and it's like you can't help but not. I mean, if you don't have headphones, you're screwed. Don't be rude, people. I think is the thing, right? Don't talk in public on your phone. It's very annoying. CommBadge or no?
That's why texting was invented.
It's
right?
exactly. I think I've written like something like 13 articles on that stuff.
And that was just last week.
I know. Yeah. Let's jump into the news of the week. We had a long thought thread, and
So we're starting the podcast
Maybe
now.
we'll start the podcast.
Okay.
But first, we want to talk about the DMCA.
I was just gonna say first. You guys want to talk about legalese and Star Trek some more? I want to jump into Windows Phone first because the big news once again for 2 weeks in a row has been Windows and Android news. iOS has kind of taken a little break, so we pushed it to the back of the rundown there. But first off, the HTC Windows Phone 8X, which we've been talking about for weeks and more weeks, our review is up. And Adam wrote this, and it actually went up this morning. So I think all of us have just had a chance to kind of look at it in the sparsest terms. But we have devices that are kind of making their way through the team. We're all getting more hands-on time with the 8X. It is an exciting device. I encourage you to read the review on the site. It is, at least from a branding perspective, the closest thing Windows Phone has to a Nexus phone. Would you guys agree?
Up to a certain extent, yes.
Yeah.
It's a Nexus phone that you can't play with and do cool stuff with.
Right. Well,
like
that's
you can
okay,
with a Nexus
because if you do that, the government is going to come after you, right?
and the baker.
And the baker, that's right, the bread maker. So have a look at the 8X review. This is this is something that I don't think any of the three of us, aside from product demo hands-ons, has actually dealt with in a way. I mean, are any of you guys?
No, not yet.
Yeah, none of us here are actually planning on ordering the 8X unless something happens that's very important for me, which is I somehow become disenfranchised with the Lumia 920, and maybe, well, and I'll just get this out of the way right now, and maybe if this wireless charging comes to pass for the 8X, that would be a significant win for HTC, and that's looking confirmed right now. Is that right, Tony? This is a news story from you from I think yesterday or the day before. Whereas this was a leaked screenshot from Verizon Wireless's internal documents.
From a training document.
It's a training.
And I'm going to just answer to this while trying to still answer your first question, even though there wasn't one. I heard one.
What about wireless charging?
The 8X yet.
No, I knew you had.
I will still have a comment on it, but it's not going to be about the product itself. So in my book, a huge con for the Windows Phone 8X from HTC is its price point. Or I can rephrase it like this: the huge pro of the Lumia 920 is its price point. So from what we've seen from the prices made official yesterday by AT&T, the HTC Windows Phone 8X is $100 more expensive than the Lumia 920. So this is already a huge con in my book, or a huge pro for the Lumia. And to get back to your real question, there was a training document from Verizon Wireless it looks like the phone is all but confirmed officially to arrive on Verizon's network. And one of the things which were listed on this document instructing Verizon personnel is that this phone allegedly supports wireless charging, which you, Michael, will probably be super amped about.
Absolutely.
Me too.
And you too, Joe. So I'm in
Joe.
minority again. And it was one of those things which the Lumia 920 had and the HTC Windows Phone 8X did not have. Well, now it sure looks like they both have it. So at the end of the day, choosing between them beyond the brand recognition and whether you're a fan of HTC or Nokia will be whether you like the camera, the build quality, or stuff like this.
And I want to talk
and
about
the price.
choosing between Windows phones and stuff like that. But first, I just want to briefly drop in. Tony, you are not in the minority. Joe and I are in the minority, especially on this team, because we are the only people who give it any damns about wireless charging whatsoever.
But I give 3.
I have written, I think, 2 pieces specifically on wireless charging, and I think probably Tony can. Whoa! Somebody just died somewhere on the podcast. Joe, are you all right?
I'm here.
Oh, good.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened either.
Okay. Maybe somebody's listening in. Hey guys, everybody who's in live.
We're getting bugged, but we're getting bugged by all the government personnel in charge of DMCA.
You know about all the DS. Exactly. Yeah. I was going to say that.
Crap! We got to talk about that at the end of the podcast so we don't trigger the feds.
Project Echelon. Anyway, the deal is this: when you're writing for a site, listeners, there's something called the editorial voice, and we kind of use this convention sometimes at Pocketnow and sometimes we don't, where we're writing an editorial and you kind of use the we phrasing instead of I. We do it in our reviews, and it's because we generally do all agree in our reviews, but we all have different opinions, which is why we're I think a pretty good editorial team. But it's always a very interesting experience to read someone else's editorial that says something like, "Here's why wireless charging sucks." And to read the phrasing is like, "We think that it sucks because this," and I'm sitting there like, I don't think it sucks. No, we don't. So we've published many articles on each side of the issue, but wireless charging was one of the things that the Lumia 920 kind of came out of the gate at the announcement with, and Nokia was like, "Look at this. Palm tried to do it, and it was awesome, but that didn't work out for them. But look, what we're doing, it's also awesome. And wireless charging is built into this JBL speaker dock, and you can put it on this fat boy pillow if you want to be like weird with your phone. I don't know what the deal is with the pillow.
And the partners."
Oh wait, the partner? What do you mean, like the?
Yeah, at Starbucks.
Oh right, yeah. That at Starbucks is like building in inductive charging into a lot of their tables here in Boston as a test market for a nationwide deployment, possibly. So that's awesome. Like, I love all this, except I think Starbucks is using a different standard. They're using the power mat thing instead of the Qi or the Key compatible one. But the point is that it was a big differentiator for the Lumia 920, and now it's kind of maybe not, because this 8X has been long rumored to also feature it, and we don't know if this is going to be only enabled for the Verizon version. What's the deal there? Is it?
I have my doubts here, and I'm by no means hating on HTC. HTC was, I think, the OEM which, correct me if I'm wrong, announced its Windows Phone lineup before Nokia. Am I right here?
No. Nokia.
No?
Nokia beat them to it. Yeah.
Okay, but the key takeaway here is that HTC was dead silent about this so-called feature. Whenever they announced the phone, they didn't say a word about this. And now I don't want to go all paranoid on this, but is there a possibility that the HTC Windows Phone X wasn't designed with inductive charging, and now seeing that the Lumia 920 has it, they're trying to include it just to scratch a con from their list? Because if that would have been there, Peter Chow would probably definitely said something about that.
That's a really good question. I mean, I guess it would depend on how far along they were in the manufacturing process, right? I mean, we know that. I think we know. We kind of all assume that the big speed bump to Windows Phone 8 deployment has been software, not hardware.
Yeah, but it's easy to add to the back of the phone an induction. How do you call that thing with the long
It's an inductive
wires and
charging
stuff?
loop.
Yeah, and two or three cables. So it's easy to add after production or after the initial plans have been approved to catch up to the market.
No. I mean, because I think it changes. I mean, you're talking about yeah, it's kind of receive only, but you're talking about a pretty significant change to a phone that doesn't have a removable battery back. And even if it had a removable battery back, you'd have to add the contacts for charging. And I don't think it's
true.
Yeah, I don't think it's an insignificant change. So who knows? That's a good question, Tony. I didn't even think about that. And I wonder if somehow Verizon has struck some kind of deal, or some
Or
carriers
maybe
have
yes.
struck this deal.
Maybe you are right, and the Verizon
inductive
version, yeah.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, but all I know is that for me as a consumer, and I think this is the important part, I have one less reason to buy the Lumia 920 now. I mean, of course,
aside from the $100.
Now, well, we can definitely talk about price, but you know what? Here's the thing. I think there are people out there who will pay more to have a lighter, slimmer phone.
That is also true, but then again, I will take this opportunity to answer everybody who was asking me, why do I shove out that much amount for an iPhone? This is why, because probably people will buy the HTC Windows Phone 8X, even if it's more expensive than the Lumia 920. That's why people buy iPhones, even if they're more expensive than the Android or iPad minis versus the Nexus 7 and rent.
Sure, it's not always a question of price.
Yeah.
You got to see what you're paying for.
So I'm going to put on my conspiracy hat here just for a minute.
Yeah.
The European Union has kind of forced us all into a micro USB standard, and Apple, I guess, has friends in the European Union, so they can get away with a non-micro USB charging standard as long as they have an adapter. But that's being able to, quote unquote, save our landfills from being filled up with all of these chargers that are proprietary for the device or whatever. And now we're even seeing some phones coming without the chargers, without sometimes even the USB cables inside the box, because they assume you've already got one.
Yeah, well, I think HTC has been talking about that. I don't think they've actually taken that step yet.
I hope they will never do.
Yeah.
And whether they do or not, that's great for the environment. It might be great for the bottom line because it saves 30 cents out of every package, which adds up after selling millions of devices. So here's where my conspiracy comes in. Everybody's already got a USB charger. Nobody has a wireless charger.
Oh.
This is all to sell accessories.
This is all to inflate accessory cost. Well.
Yeah.
But
this has wireless charging. Get this wireless charging dock.
And be cool.
Now they get $70 or $170.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Whatever.
Well, that's you know what, I don't think that's too far-fetched a conspiracy theory. I mean, of course, you can still charge. This is one of those things that people who don't like wireless charging always throw out there. They're like, how dare you? I don't want to. You have to tote a dock everywhere. Like, people behave as if the USB port no longer exists on a device that can be charged wirelessly. It's like, dude, just take your cable. It's okay. You can still take the cable with you when you travel. It's only at home that you can, if you want to, use the convenience of a wireless charging mat.
From my personal standpoint, I would, in my day-to-day life, find the wireless charging useful in one particular scenario. When I bring my phone to my car and I just put it on a dashboard or somewhere where I have this induction pad and it keeps on charging and I'm not tied to the cable, so I can get out of the car or maybe, illegally answer a phone while driving, yes. So,
well, and I think the Windows Phone implementation does not call for a magnet, which is a shame because you can do it in the car. People did it with Palm touchstones all the time because the touchstone would keep the phone anchored to the thing, and that's what the Nexus 4 is doing with its wireless charging. There's also a magnet that keeps it aligned. Anyway, I don't know. I think I could talk about this all day, but this is probably going to be a minor consideration for some people and. Tony kind of burst right out the gate there with that price comparison, and rightly so, because this is something to get excited about. Speaking of the HTC 8X versus
is that what we were talking
Lumia
about?
Yeah. This is crazy. The Lumia 920 has been announced for AT&T. It is available for pre-order today. When I get off the air, I'm going to look at ways of getting one into my hands, and
if they're not out of stock.
Oh, I don't. If they sold out in before noon on the day the pre-order opened up, I will. We have to have another podcast right away because we have to talk about this.
Then he's just going to go mug somebody. You know that, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
but I don't want it to say that on the podcast.
Right. The feds are listening. Sorry.
I got to get my hoodie on and go do that. The Lumia 920, which was we were thinking it was maybe going to be at the 150 price point or whatever, but it's going to sell for $99 on contract, and AT&T is going to give away a wireless charging dock with it, which I think is a great move on their part, and they don't have to. AT&T is not competing with anybody for the right to carry this 920 in the United States. They are the exclusive launch carrier, which is pretty awesome. But it is obviously, you can see kind of Nokia's behind the scenes work as they work to fight HTC. Who, I think before probably wasn't even on their radar, and now HTC bursts out the gate with this crazy competition, and they're like, all right, fine, well, we're going to give away this, we're going to subsidize this accessory, and we're going to price the phone. Is it $100? It's $100 cheaper?
$99.99.
So it's $99.99, and the 8X is what?
Versus $199.99.
It's a $100 difference.
Yep.
And the Lumia 920 is that for the that's for the lower capacity
2-year contract? Yeah.
It's for the 16 gig one. All right, so these things are on the same, but I that's just crazy. I mean, we're seeing some pretty cool price wars break out.
I think I know what's going on here.
Hey, what's up?
When the first wave of Nokia Windows phones came out, the 800 and the 900 later on, Stephen Elop said that this is the Windows phone. It's the signature phone. Yeah. Now, fast forward to last month, Peter Chow said that HTC Windows Phone 8X and 8S are the Windows Phone 8s. They're using even the OS name in the product name. And like the entire world was, how could they do that? Microsoft is giving up on Nokia. Well, here's what I think. Microsoft gave HTC the right to use the OS name in the device name. That's their support for HTC, and Microsoft support for Lumia, for Nokia, is a huge subsidy in price. I think that's where Microsoft's money is.
That's a good question, because I was wondering, as I was saying, like, look, they're giving away the wireless charging accessory. They're pricing this thing really low on contract again, like they did with the Lumia 900. How can Nokia really afford to do this? And do we have any data on? I mean, they have to announce this stuff in their quarterly earnings, right? If Microsoft is just like, here's another couple billion.
They will, but this is relating to a topic which is also on the list, so I'm bringing this up. Steve Ballmer, while talking about Windows Phone, he said that, I'm trying to find the quote, but my eyes are running on this huge screen. The idea is that we will see unprecedented marketing pushes, and but I think in conclusion, subsidies for Windows 8, Windows RT, and Windows Phone 8 products, something which has never been seen with any Microsoft product in the past. And I think this is, again, where Microsoft's money is.
Yeah.
Well, they have to. They have to. To read that quote for you, we are still relatively small, but with the work we have done with Nokia, HTC, Samsung, and others, there is now an opportunity to create really a strong third participant in the smartphone market. Now, that's very, very bold words, but Steve Ballmer has never been one who didn't say bold words. He's always been the chief cheerleader at Microsoft.
Except in Nebraska.
They've got, what, 4%?
Now, bringing this up, this reminds me of the initial commercial of Windows 1.8. Yeah. How much do you think the Lumia 920 costs? $199? $149.99?
$500? No!
99 to 99.
Can we please remake that commercial? Can someone please dress up as Steve Ballmer and make that commercial for Windows Phone? Oh, I'm sorry, Joe, but yeah, no, you're correct. They do have 4% market share. They are still very small.
And apparently, AT&T had an option to either include that wireless charging dock accessory, or a slap chop, or a salad shooter.
Nice. Yeah,
they make the wise choice.
So this is fascinating. What is this for the first time? For the first time, we have Windows phones coming to, many carriers in the United States, many carriers worldwide, but they're duking it out in a very high-profile fashion. When Nokia came to AT&T in the United States with the Lumia 900, I mean, that was shaking the market up enough. That was like, wow, look, AT&T is really putting some dollars behind this. Nokia is making a big noise. Microsoft is making a big noise. There's a big push, but it only had itself to fight with. I mean, its competition was the HTC Titan II. It was like, wow, who gives it any damn? But man, look, now you have these colorful phones from two different manufacturers, and colorful literally in addition to figuratively, like fighting with each other publicly, and the companies have so much at stake because HTC is doing poorly once again, and Nokia is obviously doing poorly, and they have so much at stake with these products that they're kind of taking shots at each other in the press. it's a fascinating landscape. And it's more interesting than Windows Phone has ever been. And now finally they have the guts of these devices. The processors are good enough to where like the hardcore geeks are like, all right, I guess I can take notice of that. And the Microsoft fans are always going to be vocal, and it's just awesome. I mean, I think that, and also I don't think there's any other player in the marketplace who can even get close to the idea of maybe becoming the third relevant platform, right?
Well, not at this particular moment, and with this amount of money which Microsoft is willing to spend.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I kind of have a deja vu. Are we going into Android, because I have the perfect shift?
We are.
Okay, so
we are.
I'm having a deja vu with this Microsoft and Nokia and Lumia 920 thing, comparing with the Google LG Nexus 4. I've written a piece, I think it was this weekend, and the LG Nexus 4 is like 5 or 6 times more expensive in Europe than it is in the US, and I'm afraid that's what's gonna happen with the Lumia 920. I think that Microsoft, as Google, is subsidizing a great amount of the product's price in the US, and when that product will leave the US or on other markets like in Asia or Europe, the price will be 5 times as much as what you guys will probably pay. It's $449.99 unlocked. Lumia 920 on AT&T.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, what are we talking about here? It will probably get to Europe at like 650 euros or something like that, which is already 3 times the amount of price. And to make the analogy with the Nexus 4, instead of paying $199 or whatever the Nexus 4's price is in the Google Play Store in the US, in Europe it's around 600 euros, which is close to $800.
Which is crazy.
Yes. So I'm afraid this will happen.
That would be a real shame, and I think you're probably right, considering what we heard from commenters after a podcast a couple shows ago where we were talking about iPhone pricing, and people from every country are writing in saying like the iPhone would cost me $1,500, the iPhone would cost me $900.
It costed me $1,000 here.
It cost you? Wow. Yeah, I mean,
and I bought it from the Apple Store, from Hungary, of course. It was $990 something to be specific. So yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, we can't predict pricing, and it is a shame when you see so much rejoicing from say the United States, where it's like, wow, the Nexus 4 is $350, that's amazing, and then overseas it's like, well, no, as a matter of fact, it's double that. So yeah, I agree. I hope that doesn't really happen, but we'll have to see. We are already in Android, so I want to keep talking about Android because that's we got an Android guy on the podcast today. You still awake over there, Joe, after all this Windows Phone exploded?
So
you still with us? After all this live tile talk?
Absolutely. I want you guys to know I started out life as a Windows Mobile guy.
As we all did.
Mm-hmm.
That was me. That's what I did.
Do you guys have a cat ringtone?
No, I've got an actual live cat.
Is it USB powered?
Sorry, guys. Okay, the cat's now in and under the bed. We can move back to the podcast. My cat likes Android, by the way.
Hide your mouse. Hide your USB mouse.
Oh, I just got it. Sorry. We were all. Yeah, I know. We all kind of started life as Windows Mobile guys. So yeah, no, I don't mean to. I just like calling you Joe Levi, the Android guy, because it's.
Oh, I do too. I don't want our listeners to ever think that I am anti-Windows Phone. I think we need to have that other competitor in the marketplace to not just keep the other two players, Android included, honest, but also to push the innovation. iOS really hasn't innovated. It's stagnated, and it's made very small incremental updates. Mm-hmm. But we need to have someone who's, well, in honest, what do they have to lose? They've got 4%, so they're willing to do really, really bold stuff because they can. If they don't, they've only got 4% to lose, right? So we need them. I appreciate what they're doing. I still think live tiles are way too distracting, but I'm glad we have them.
Love them. This is, Joe, you're making a really good point with regard to innovation. And I wrote a piece about this yesterday that I kind of like the way this piece came out. It's one of my shorter ones, but I like the way it landed because I wrote a piece called "Why Leaving Android for Another Platform is Harder Than Ever Before," because I'm thinking about this, right? Like, I mean, I think I'm not alone. A lot of people are thinking about what's this new Windows Phone 8. I want to try it, and also I want to use it as my daily driver. And so I'm like, but the problem is I've had an Android phone for a year. And I've been using Google products like extensively since 2006. So it's like that level of integration in my palm is really alluring, and I use it constantly. So the idea of jumping to another platform, it's not an ecosystem question. It's not like I've spent all this money on apps and now I have to buy them again. Like, no, I already did the math on that in another article, and I'll end up like re-spending like $14. I'm okay with that, you know. But
Because you use free apps, not because of something else.
no, I don't know why it is, and maybe I'm just lame. But the thing is that like it's scary because I'm going to lose so much stuff that I use, or I'll have to find third-party solutions for all the stuff I use natively, like Google Voice, like Google, like Google Drive and other like Google-centric things. I'm going to be switching to Bing Maps from Google Maps, and I use Google Maps all the time. Blah 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 blah. But that's all kind of pedestrian and dull. Like we kind of talk about this all the time. The more interesting thing to me is what Google is planning to do in the future. And I use Google Now as the example in the piece as something they're really doing that's really groundbreaking. And some idiot, commenters like, so basically you're going to miss Google Now. And that's your, and I'm like, no. And actually, he's not. He's one of our regular commenters. I shouldn't say he's an idiot. But, and I'm like, no, read the piece again. It's not about just Google Now. It's about look at all the innovation, look at all the momentum Google has with innovation as far as driving the industry forward and driving the future of search forward. And search is everything. And, I mean, it's amazing what they're doing if you read some of the interviews with their execs and what they're planning on doing with Android. And I don't want to be missing out on that. And Microsoft is doing great things too with Windows Phone 8, but I feel like they're still in a UI sense, yes, they're ahead of a lot of people, but in a lot of other senses, they're still playing catch up. Or at least they're just trying to they're doing a good job of keeping pace. But so I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about this? Because
Allow me to disagree.
I love it, please.
Up until a certain extent, I know exactly where you're coming from.
Please.
But in 2012, and not necessarily this year, but from let's say 2010 and up until now, platforms and applications have been so good at becoming intercompatible. Whether you have an iOS phone or a Windows phone, you will be able to set up your Gmail account with the calendar. Now, I'm not sure about Windows Phone 8, but you will have Google Drive on your iOS device. Obviously, Google Voice is something I have never used because it's not available around here, and it's not available in many countries outside of the US, this except if it's a US only thing. So what I'm saying is that they are all offering some sort of interoperability things. You can set up most of your applications or services you are using on a daily basis on other things too. But then again, the downside is, of course, every company wants to push their own products and services. I just read a piece that the famed Windows Live Messenger will die and it will be replaced by Skype.
Yes.
So Microsoft is pushing Windows Live Mail as Hotmail or Outlook.com now. They're pushing Office. They're pushing Skype. Google's doing the exact same thing with its own products, and Apple is doing the exact same thing with its own offerings. The good thing about 2012 is that you can use it, if not all of the products, but most of the products on other platforms too. Of course, Google Maps is no longer available on iOS, and it's not available on Windows Phone, but you go to the mobile website and you have the exact same experience.
No, you don't. You don't have the exact same experience if you go to the website in the browser. Come on.
Yeah, you now have Street View, man.
I know you have more features, but it doesn't function nearly as well. It's not the same thing.
Well, then again, let me rephrase. It depends on what you're using Google Maps for.
Sure.
So my key takeaway here is that the line is becoming very thin between this war of offerings between the companies.
I think you're right, Tony. In one respect, I agree with you. I think the companies are somewhat equal in offering maybe a like number of things. Like Microsoft has its Google equivalents that it's offering. It has enough Google equivalents for every Google product. It has something to answer it with. But a lot of those are just, for me, it's like, wow, Microsoft is really focusing on Skype. Well, I know a lot more people on Google Talk than I know on Skype. Microsoft is saying, look at OneNote, and I'm like, well, I use Evernote, and thankfully Evernote is on Windows Phone 8. Microsoft is like, look at the Office suite. I swear, if I have to hear about the Microsoft Office suite one more time, because I hate Office. I've always hated Office. It's like advertising like based on having an awesome Office suite integration. If you're talking about a consumer product, is for me like saying like, come to our ice cream stand because the paint job on the ice cream stand is really awesome, instead of saying come to our ice cream stand because the ice cream is great. It's like
Milton from The Office talking about his red swing line stapler. At the end of the day, it's a stapler.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so we can get into that a lot. I get the point, Tony, and I think that a lot of commenters have rightly said, no, but there are equivalents on the Windows platform. There are equivalents on iOS. You just have to know what you're getting into, and you have to be willing to make that sacrifice and say, yeah, I got to use some third-party stuff because Google and Microsoft don't want to play nice on some stuff. And whatever, these are the sacrifices we make when we jump platforms. It's just interesting to see how much harder it is to leave Android now than it was even a year ago.
And it's our luck or our curse that we have to use them all at the same time because of our jobs.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple observations from the Android guy. First of all, I think I said it was the Office. I know it's Office Space. Don't ream me about that, please. I just misspoke. And it definitely was his stapler. Don't swing line. So
Swing line.
Microsoft has always been, and I'm a Microsoft developer. I code all day long in Microsoft technologies. Microsoft has always been a king of integration, whether that's Active Directory, Exchange, Word, Excel, SharePoint, SQL, all of their stuff integrates together and works really, really well. Even when one solution might not be the technologically superior solution, chances are you're still going to go with it because it's so tightly integrated with everything else. Windows Mobile had that. Windows Phone doesn't, or at least it didn't in its first iteration. They scrapped everything, started from the ground up. This is not the next version of Windows Mobile. This was Windows Phone 1.0, starting from the ground and moving up. Microsoft is still really good at integration. Google, not quite as good. They're not quite as tightly coupled with everything. They're getting there. But you can now very, very easily, and my experience with Windows 8, which I'm running on my desktop computer right now, love it or hate it, one of the things that it asked for was all of my other accounts, kind of like an Android install does. If you've got a Facebook account, a Twitter account, hey, if you've got a Gmail account, it asked for that. My Windows 8 now just automatically gets my Gmail, it gets my Google Calendar, it's integrated my Google Contacts. It just did it. It pulled that in. If Windows Phone is not doing that now, or not doing that to your satisfaction now, they will soon. It will be seamless. It won't matter. So the two halves of the discussion, and honestly, when I read your article, I wondered where you were going with it, Michael. I thought this was going to be more about, and I hope I'm not alone in it, that your article was going to be more about your data portability. I've got all my contacts. I've got all my emails. I've got my calendar over in Google. I don't want to abandon all that and put it all in again on Windows. No, I don't think that's going to to because it's going to be transportable.
No, that's why I didn't talk about it, because it's not an issue. Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of what confused me. But all of these other apps and whatnot, yeah, Microsoft, you just wait. They're going to do it. They're going to do it right, and hopefully they'll do it when they're still relevant. Yeah. Time is the only thing holding.
That's the only question.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's a big question, and it's one of the, I think, Tony, as you touched on, it's one of these sacrifices that we kind of have to be willing to endure by virtue of having a world where we have multiple platforms to choose from. Yeah. These platforms would not all be separate and be important if they were all the same. If we had three separate, slightly different flavors of Android out there, it wouldn't be as much fun. So you have to be able to kind of deal with these difficulties when you hop between platforms, and I'm happy to do it. It is, after all, fun to relearn an entirely new world. It's particularly
in 3 days.
I beg your pardon?
In 3 days to learn that.
Yeah, exactly.
In 3 days.
And I think the difference is not that huge between platforms on mobile devices than it is on personal computers. I mean, the difference, at least to me, between a Windows PC and a Mac is much more big than it is between Android, iOS, and Windows Phone. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
No, I think you make a good point, and I think a big part of that is that the interface technology is so similar across devices in the mobile world. Like, if you think about it just from a hardware perspective, all these have capacitive touchscreens, and from a software perspective, you flick, swipe, and tap. Like, we understand these methods of input, right? But on a computer, like, yeah, you have a mouse pointer and you have a mouse, but the software is laid out completely differently, and right clicks do different things. And yeah, I guess that's analogous on the mobile side too. We have long presses do some things, and you have gestures coming in from the side, whatever. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Every platform has its learning curve. The really good platforms have a short learning curve.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I remember
regardless of if it's mobile or if
absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
It should just be intuitive.
And this is why
it should just work.
This seems to be like the theme of the podcast, where we kind of keep regressing into the Windows Phone 8 in the Windows 8 block. But that's why I'm a little concerned, very briefly, about Windows 8. Not because it's not going to take off, because it's going to catch on like wildfire. But all these gestures on Windows 8 tablets, where you like draw in from the left to multitask, you draw in from the right for the charm bar, you like swipe down from the top to close applications. I feel like people are going to use Windows 8, and they're not going to not buy Windows 8, but they're going to spend 6 months using Windows 8, and then somebody's going to like pull out the charm bar for them, like on their tablet. And they're going to be like, "What's that?" Because that's what happened with WebOS. Like, people used to have their pre next to me, and they'd be like trying to close an app or whatever, and they'd be like, "Yeah, it's stupid. Like, I can't close apps on this thing." I'm like, "You just flick the card off the top of the screen," and then they're like, mind is blown. And I'm like,
or when somebody did it, for instance, just by a mistake, where did that go?
Exactly. And because like when you have a user interface that has elements that are hidden like that, it's very hard to get people to learn them right off the bat. Because I don't know about you guys, but the first thing I do is skip tutorials. Like, a device tries to teach me how to use it, and I'm like, no, I got it. I can figure it out.
It's like HTC with their tips overlaid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and exactly, the overlay layer on HTC devices, and Samsung. Oh, my God. I mean, it's a good idea if you watch the tutorials, and I always give them high marks for trying to teach customers, but man, every time I get a new Galaxy Note or
Michael,
Galaxy S3, it's like...
These are your 75th and 127th tablets. Imagine you're a first-time smartphone user.
No, exactly, and that's why I give them props. I'm like, yeah, you should put it on. But man, if I have to bring down that notification shade on a new device one more time and have Samsung say, like, this is where your notifications go. Yeah, I know.
Do you guys remember Clippy from Microsoft Office?
Yeah, but I love the Einstein.
Wait, what?
It looks like you're trying to close an app. It looks like you're trying to get your notifications. Just shut up.
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to do.
And the bonus with Samsung devices is that like half of it is those kind of novelty features that Samsung half does right, and half of them are just total crap. So it's like, hey, if you can double tap the device if you want to go to the top of a list, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll enable that feature. And then for the rest of the device's life, you're like whacking the thing on the top of it. It's like, wow, this isn't working at all. Thanks a lot.
And is it Samsung that writes all those tips in some like handwriting font so it looks like
that's
HTC.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Hate that.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. It looks like you just scribbled this thing together 5 minutes before you push the device out the door.
They want to be friendly. They want to transmit that personal feeling to you, that it's not a machine with the roboto font. It's a person that transmits you the information and tries to teach you how to do stuff.
Wrote it by hand in Comic Sans.
Comic Sans.
Speaking of HTC, there's a new device on the horizon for Verizon customers in the U.S., which which we think is the same device as the Butterfly J. Mm-hmm. This is called. It's called.
Is this a final name?
I was going to say the amazing name-changing HTC Android phone, because this thing has been rumored as the DIX, or the DIX. The DLX, the Butterfly J, of course, is its name in Japan, and now we're seeing it as the Droid DNA on Verizon, which I don't know if you guys like. I understood DIX, like Droid Incredible X, cool. I understand DLX if you want to go deluxe. Butterfly J is weird, but it's Japan, so okay. But like Droid DNA, I'm really looking forward to the marketing copy that we are just going to be hit in the face with to justify this weirdo name. Like, it's in your genes. It's so amazing that it's in the cellular structure of your body. You know, I don't get it.
You.
Exactly, right, yeah. It knows you because it is you. Droid DNA. You know, I'm not looking forward to being hit over the head with that. But I am looking forward to attending the launch event because that's happening next week. And I'll be going to cover it, and I'm actually really excited because this is.
Let us know if that image that we've got posted on our website is true. Are we really going to get a phone that has a honeycomb wallpaper on it?
What is it? Is it up on the site right now?
Yes.
Was it posted yesterday? Did I miss it, or is it like brand new? Honeycomb wallpaper.
Tell
us about this.
This is
Joe,
Steven's article. HTC and Verizon schedule press event Droid DNA launch, and it has a new render at the bottom.
Render. It's been updated. The post has been updated with the new wallpaper and the leak of a new press render.
Yes. So here's this press render, and it's got a red colored. Well, because it's a Droid brand, obviously it's going to have red stuff on it, but it's the honeycomb hexagons.
Yeah.
What?
Joe, do you remember when we saw the first leaks of the Nexus 4 and it had basically a screen or the notification tray of a cyanogen mod ROM? So this might be something similar. This might be just the not the final render, or they might just go with this super cool red honeycomb wallpaper.
You know, I think that's probably final wallpaper. I mean, it is cool looking. I have to say, it is. It brings back.
But everyone hates honeycomb. They hate it. They hate it. They hate it.
I know, but people
who know
buy
Android are going to look at this and go, honeycomb? I don't want that, and they're going to move on to another device.
Right, but it's not like a Nexus device, right? Like it's not for the geeks. It's for the people who are.
Oh,
who see a
I
commercial
got it, guys. We're total morons.
Why? How are we?
I mean,
that's
it's
true.
called DNA, and if you take some looks of the DNA, you know those spirals and stuff like the DNA,
the helix.
Yeah, and that probably tries to emulate that.
I don't know. I don't think if they wanted to do a helix, they would do a helix and not a bunch of hexagons. You know? I don't know.
Maybe I'm a moron.
We didn't want to have to break it to you, at least.
Yeah. Realization of the day.
You know, I don't want to. I don't want
trying to find excuses. Don't blame me.
Okay, so the take home from this is, please, if you're a carrier or if you're a manufacturer, and you before you release any of this stuff, we're really, really good with NDAs. Bring us in. Just hire us for a few hours. Show us the cool stuff. We'll let you know what sucks and what doesn't, so that you can make a better product.
So
without even looking at it.
I didn't even mention that this device, the highlight feature of this device, which if you need a reminder, like I did just now, it has a 1080p display, or it probably will. If it's the same device. So that's, alternately cool and not cool. There's been some spirited discussion in the comments on pieces that we write, like the one I wrote about 1080p screens are useless on smartphones because they're so small. And then some people come back and they say, yeah, it's not just about pixel density. A 1080p display really does look better in various different ways that are measurable and all this kind of stuff. So I'm very excited to lay eyes on it, and I'll be giving you my impressions when I do. In New York City next week, and I'm very excited. So I don't want listeners to come away with this idea that we just hate the fact that they've changed the name 5 times and this is a dumb device. Like I think all of us to a person really like HTC at Pocketnow, like we talk about on the podcast pretty often, and I like to see new products from them. So this will be fun.
Just a short disclaimer, we're 99.99% sure that this is going to be the Droid DNA, but there's no hint on the invitation itself, so it might just be a 0.1% that we're wrong on this, and it's going to be a totally different device.
Wouldn't that be hilarious if they brought us to New York City?
Android 4.2 for every Verizon Android ever released.
Or they could probably announce the HTC Windows Phone 8X, which was rumored to come to Verizon, the leaked documents and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, and leaked images of the silkscreen Verizon
so it could
logo
go 3 ways, 4 ways.
Yeah. You know that, but so the invite says, we invite you to experience our latest collaboration, single tense collaboration. So I feel like
could be the Droid DNA, could be the Windows Phone 8X.
Yeah.
But because it's singular, probably not both.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think it's the Windows Phone one. It doesn't look like the
Or
invitation
maybe
is
it
dark.
could be a
and
collaboration with multiple
warm and-
devices.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I would love that. Anyway, moving on. We've given that thing enough time. The final kind of two things in Android here are smaller elements. And Joe, I want to ask him about his piece in a second. But just real quick, Lenovo has announced this kind of Android device, or it's leaked or something that's happened that has a massive battery in it. It is a 3,500 milliamp hour battery. The Razr Max from Motorola, the kind of previous crown holder for high capacity battery, tops out at 3,300. So this is a 3,500 milliamp hour battery in a Lenovo phone called the P770, if you want to look it up. That's awesome. I want to see, and I want to write a piece on this, I want to see a battery milliamp hour race. I'm not interested in higher resolution displays because I don't hold my phone 2 inches from my eyeballs all the time. I don't care. I want my phone to last all day. And to see manufacturers, besides Motorola, who are crazy in some of the best ways ever, say, we're going to throw this massive battery in our phone, especially when it's this kind of random brand like Lenovo, that's awesome. What do you guys think about this?
I welcome the idea. I love the idea, but I just think on a conspiracy level, again, that it's not in the manufacturer's interest to deliver you a high capacity battery, because if you have a small capacity battery, you wear it out relatively quick. If it's a 1 day charge or half a day charge, you'll have to charge it more than you charge the 35 milliamp hour battery. So more charges means that battery will probably die relatively quickly, and with no means to change the batteries in phones nowadays, they're all going with non-removable batteries, you'll probably have to buy a new phone. So I'd love to see at least a phone which will get me through 1.5 days without me needing to turn it off completely overnight. But I just don't think that we're only limited by battery technology.
Yeah, well, from a broader standpoint, though, you're looking at, it's like if you're a manufacturer that's kind of doesn't ship a lot of phones that sell a lot, like Lenovo, who's a very big prominent company in computers and less so in smartphones. You're like, well, how can we differentiate? How can we sell more units? Let's make a big headline grabbing battery, and let's say use it all day and then the next, whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you, Tony, for being the conspiracy guy on this one and giving me a break. That's awesome. So I just reviewed the Droid Razr HD, the non-max version.
Yes.
Which only has, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, I think it was 2730 milliamp hour.
Sure,
somewhere.
We'll go with that.
You reviewed that.
I did, but it's a non-removable battery.
Yeah,
I couldn't look at the battery. I couldn't even get the back cover off. I couldn't even get the little door open to put a SD card in it. But I digress. That phone with an S4 Plus processor in it ran over 20 hours.
Whoa.
with my, I would call it significantly heavier than average user use. Mm-hmm. It was average for me, but that includes...
This is not the Max. This is the regular Razr HD.
This is not the Max. This is just the regular one.
That's awesome.
In fact, that's what I concluded in the article is you don't need to spend the money on the Max unless you are a diehard road warrior who needs to have all that extra time. 20 plus hours... And it was still going. I mean,
awesome.
I was in the yellow, but I wasn't in the red yet, and I was at 20.4 hours, and
that
still.
Is nice.
I remember
it was amazing.
watching your video, Joe, and I took a moment to enjoy watching another Joe Levi review, which I hadn't watched in a long time. I was like, God, you are a soothing guy to watch. On your reviews, it is great. Like a lot of, it's like some of us are like, I'm like, so I'm going to tell you about something else, and we've all got our own like styles, and Joe's like, I'm going to tell you about this phone. and you're going to like it.
It comes with rich Corinthian leather. Which, by the way, we need. I want a phone that's all
Corinthian
decked out in
phone?
leather. I think that'd be awesome.
I want one of those bamboo phones. But go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
So yeah, big batteries are awesome. If you've got a bump on the back of your phone and it looks goofy already, fill up that bump with throwing in extra milliamp hours. To what Tony was saying, yeah, batteries are not necessarily rated as far as longevity in, it's going to last a year. It's going to last 2 years. It's rated in how many charge-discharge cycles you have, and the smaller battery you have, the more of those cycles you're going to have, the faster you're going to use it up until it just doesn't hold a charge for more than a couple hours at a time, or you have to leave it plugged in all the time. And in that case, you don't have a smartphone or a tablet anymore.
You have a desktop.
You've got a desktop. Yeah, you're tethered. Congratulations. Now, another observation is one of the first things that I had the chance to review, one of the first accessories that I had a chance to review when I was working on the Galaxy Nexus stuff, and we all hit that all at the same time, was the extended battery. And I said, I don't really need it. The 1700 stock battery, whatever it is just fine. It gets me through the majority of the day, and that's just about it, and I don't care. No way, dude. I have since turned 180, and I'm running I think it's a 2200 milliamp hour battery in my phone. I get a full day out of it, but that's it. Right. 8-9 hours tops. And if I'm turning on my hotspot, forget about that.
Yeah.
It's half that.
I burned it through a whole lot of battery in with a hotspot yesterday.
Yeah. So bigger. Samsung did that, I'm sure, just so that they could sell an accessory. They could sell an extra SKU, and all the phones in my house, all the Galaxy Nexi in my house, and yes, I have 4 of them now. All but one of them have the extended battery.
Yeah.
This one coming with a full battery, and I don't know, this battery in this screen grab looks like it could be removable.
Yeah, it does have that, doesn't it?
It's got the plus and minus sign on it. I don't see tape holding it down anywhere like you do on the non-removable ones.
Right.
So I'm wondering if this isn't an extended battery for it, which would make sense. Sell an accessory upgrade to it. But even still, that's fabulous. Before I go way too long-winded, which was about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, we got to move on.
With new processors coming out, the S4 series particularly, those guys are sipping at the power like nothing I've ever seen. So just looking at the battery capacity itself, you got to remember that's part of the story. The other part is what's powering it, because like we saw with that Razer HD, even with the Plus processor, not the Pro processor, but the Plus, it's doing phenomenally well with a decent sized battery with that new advanced processor.
That's and that's what, when you brought up the Galaxy Nexus, I was like, yeah, I had the 2100 milliamp hour battery in there or whatever it was, and it wasn't a question of the battery itself. It was a question of the design of the phone and how poorly the LTE version managed its battery life. And yeah, there's so many variables that go into that. We have to jump into iOS because, as usual, we're over time. As I was saying to Tony before we started recording, overtime for us is the new on time. So we can't. iOS had another light week in the wake of a lot of big news in iOS, and now we're kind of in the lull. But Apple has reported sales of 3 million iPad Minis.
No.
No, that
3 million iPads in total.
3 million iPads shipped or what?
It's 3 million iPads sold over the weekend, including minis and iPad 4s.
The 4 and the 3, presumably, right?
No, only the new ones.
Oh, only the new ones.
Only the new ones.
God, they just pick and choose what. I mean, not Apple. Like manufacturers just pick and choose what they want to report. So that was 3 million iPads this weekend, which was the weekend of the 4th and 5th or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad? Because they're not breaking it down into iPad mini figures. Like a lot of people have made a big news deal out of that they haven't announced specific figures for the mini.
It could go both ways, and I am right now looking or searching. Can you just fill in 20 seconds while I search for something?
Oh yeah, we can fill time like champs.
So in that episode of Trek, when they were doing that thing and they shot those things.
Oh yeah, and then they bounced back and hit him in the face. Yeah, that always happens.
So let me bring up something. I've got a day job. A lot of you already know that. Our CIO came up to me last night, and he now has an iPad Mini.
Oh.
And he's like, wow, this, I didn't think I'd like it because it was so small, but wow, this is just awesome. And he's doing this as he's picking up my Nexus 7 from my desk and looking at it and running his hands over it. And I don't know if he thought that I also had an iPad Mini or if he was thinking, man, this is just an awesome form factor. And I led him into it saying, yeah, that 7-inch, that 7-inch size is just ideal. It's not too big that you can't easily carry it around with you like some of the 10-inchers are. It's not real heavy, and it's small enough, big enough that you can read it and use it, small enough that you will have it with you to be able to. And he was just all for that. In fact, he made the comment, or agreed with the comment, that the big size, the big iPad, or even the 10-inch tablets, yeah, it's like the Reader's Digest large print edition.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's entirely true. I mean, we have this this continuous love fest for the 7-inch and 8-inch form factor around here, and it's entirely justified. I'm glad that, I'm glad to hear testimony from a real life person outside of that. Tony, you've found your piece of information.
Yeah, I was looking for how many iPad 3 units did Apple sell this March when they introduced it, and I could only found the only press release, which was around 2 weeks after the iPad 3 became available. So it took 2 weeks for the iPad 3 alone to sell 3 million units. Now, it took 3 days for the iPad Mini and the iPad 4 to reach that number. Now, we have a couple of hints in the press release. The new iPad with Retina display, that's the name, so the iPad 4, demand for the iPad 4 was higher than demand for the iPad 3, but we don't know exact numbers. As far as I'm concerned, I would tend to believe that out of these 3 million iPads, I would believe that somewhere around 65-70% were iPad minis and the rest were iPad 4s. And here are my reasons. If you remember pre-orders, the iPad minis were the first ones to sell out in the pre-order period. When these tablets became available at brick and mortar stores, we got stories of the iPad mini selling out. Now, of course, I could play devil's advocate and say the iPad mini stock was lower than the iPad 4 stock, but
they didn't have lines for them either.
They had lines in some regions, they didn't have in other regions. And here's what I'm saying is that if you have an iPad 3, I personally don't see a reason to upgrade to the iPad 4. Right. Or if you have an iPad 3, I don't see the reason to upgrade/downgrade to the iPad mini. But if you have an iPad 2, you probably want to buy the iPad 4 or the iPad mini. So what I would have liked is to see a breakdown of how many iPad minis, not necessarily because I want those numbers personally, but because Phil Schiller was so enthused about comparing the Mini and the Nexus 7 on stage, and we know that it took 6 months for Google, 5 months for Google and Asus to sell 3 million Nexus 7s. I would have wanted to know how many did Apple manage to sell in 3 days. If it's 1 million, then they're that much better. If it's 2 million, even better. If it's 50,000, that's bull.
Right. And
you said it best, Tony. They don't want you to know those specific numbers because of the lay of the land. You're going to get a lot of people who aren't going to upgrade to it because it's not really an upgrade, it's a downgrade, and not just in size, but also not having a Retina display and yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. So you're going to start seeing those types of numbers reported, and I think they'll be impressive numbers with the iPad Mini 2. Which I'm going to go on the record here, and if I'm wrong, Michael will eat my hat, that it will have a Retina display, and it will most likely have an A6 processor in it. It will be an iPad 4 mini. Right. And that's what everyone will be interested in.
I will also disagree, and I'll say that there will only be a Retina display if Apple will be bold enough to introduce a new resolution. The iPad 3 and iPad 4's resolution in 7.9 inches, I think we will never see. So we will probably see Retina if they introduce another intermediate resolution, which I don't see Apple doing at the moment. And if I'm wrong, Michael will eat my hat.
Hey, I'm not. I got so many hats in the buffer. We will see what they do with screen resolution. I agree that is a concern that that Apple has until now. Well, Apple continues to kind of sidestep really well this issue of like, are we going to alienate developers with a new screen resolution? Because when they did it with Retina, they just doubled everything. And with the iPad Mini, they were like, yeah, remember that old resolution we were at? Now it's at a smaller screen size, and so just keep using the same thing.
Still, that resolution is still the standard for the App Store because there are still the majority of iPads there are iPad 1s and 2s. So those who have iPad 3s are less than those who have iPad 1s and 2s. And this Mini is basically using the same resolution as the iPad 1 and iPad 2, so developers are not affected in any case.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, and that's why Apple is really, really good at dealing with this thing. Because they're like either you have the double resolution or you have the single resolution and you can code for whatever and blah blah blah. So I agree, Tony. I don't think that they would be terribly likely to launch a third screen resolution. But then again, we have an entire year presumably before the iPad Mini sequel launches.
True.
And anything can happen between now and then, including iOS gaining even more traction. And Apple saying, sorry to do this to you developers, but you're going to make a lot more money. Here's a third screen resolution.
Yeah. There already is a third resolution. We have the tall resolution now.
Oh, what, for the iPhone 5?
So my question, yeah, for the iPhone 5. So my question is, could we see in the future an iPad Mini that is a little bit narrower and a lot taller, and would that be a Retina display?
I can't see Apple making a device that looks like that.
No, they went with that with the phone, but they will never do that with the tablet because tablets, as far as they are concerned, are content consumption devices. And as far as Apple is concerned, they think that the only or the perfect aspect ratio for content consumption is 4:3.
Same time. I agree, Tony. And for me, I kind of like that too. But Apple was also once the company that said, we're not going to do a 7-inch tablet.
No, they did an 8-inch tablet.
Oh, whatever. You know what I mean.
I know.
I'm glad someone else sees that. But no, I'm thinking if we're talking content consumption, what content are we talking about? Are we talking about books? Are we talking about websites? Or are we talking about
everything in general? So except for video, 4:3 is the best.
Except for video.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now,
if video expands, and we see even more offerings like we're seeing with Hulu Plus getting more stuff, Netflix getting no more stuff but not losing as much. We're getting all of this widescreen video content. I've already got this nice widescreen Android tablet, and what does Apple have? Well, you can watch it widescreen on your iPhone 5, but not on a bigger screen.
Yes, Joe, but it's only one out of the four. So we have web, we have books, we have pictures, and we have videos. So except for videos, books and web and pictures are better off on the 4:3-inch screen. So I think they won't change the entire perception just because videos by themselves.
Well, we don't know. We'll have to see. I think it's going to be fun to talk about. iOS. As we start, especially as we start to hear what Sir Jony Ive is going to do, what kind of mark he's going to leave on the software side of things in the wake of Forstall. So until then, let's move on because we have very little to speculate on, and even though we could speculate all day, we have to wrap it up. So
and it's so much fun to speculate.
It really is. But let's we have two relevant pieces of listener mail this week, and as always, we thank our listeners for sending them in. And the first one is from someone who says, "I don't mind if you get my name wrong because I live in Serbia, so it doesn't matter." That is verbatim. Thank you. Well, I'm going to try my best. This is from Sibin Sedlan.
That's correct.
Yes,
that is correct.
Yes.
Except for the fact if he's from Serbia, if he missed some diacritics, but if his name is written like this, then he's Sibin Sedlan.
Sibin Sedlan. Okay. Well, good. I got one right for once. Maybe. He says, "Hi, I love the podcast. It makes an early trip to school very fun. Thank you. That's great to hear." A couple episodes back, Brandon talked about how we could change the screen texture on a smartphone so that when you use the stylus, it feels like pen on paper. Recently, I read about a company called Tactile, which is promising a drastic change in screen technology. They believe that when you're typing on a soft keyboard, the glass could change so that buttons appear on it. When you're done typing, the buttons just disappear. He says that's pretty much possible with today's technology. You can find the commercial on YouTube. So we've talked about this before, and we've spent so much time on the air talking about it that we shouldn't talk about it too much right now. But you are absolutely correct, Sibin. Like we've seen technology demoed from companies that essentially changes, like it places a like it changes the voltage of the current that the screen is running on. So it increases resistance when you touch it based on how much voltage they're running through there, which is really, really cool. I mean, like, you can be running your finger along the thing, and then they amp up this, they amp up the charge, and all of a sudden your finger is like sticking to the screen, which is awesome. And
you guys remember we were waiting for the iPhone 5 and we got the iPhone 4S, and one of the features rumored for then the iPhone 5 was this thing.
Yeah.
That would have been
tactile
so
interface.
cool.
Oh, it would have been great. I mean, and it is. It's a really cool idea, and it's something I think we will see, because I still hear this today, guys. I just heard it the other day from someone who had switched from his BlackBerry to an iPhone. And he was like, yeah, I love it. I love everything about it. I can't really get used to the keyboard still. And it had been a couple weeks. And, of course, he'll get used to the keyboard at some point. But it is going to be inferior for a lot of people, regardless of how long they're given to get used to a soft-touch keyboard. There's something about that tactile response. And, touchscreens will find a way to replicate this. And it'll become widespread once it becomes useful in a broad sense. And I'm looking forward to it, because it's going to be the next cool thing. I can't wait to review a production version of something like Tactile. Also,
or even pre-production.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
getting our hands on that.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm
But
so excited. About
there's something to be said for that tactile feedback. My first Windows Mobile days, all of my Windows Mobile phones, save one, had a slide-out keyboard. I even had the AT&T Tilt.
Yes.
Or Tilt 2, running it on T-Mobile, which apparently is illegal now or after January. But it had a keyboard. When I switched to Android, my G1 had a keyboard. Then I went with a Nexus one and no keyboard. But my next phone after that, I went back to a keyboard, the G2. Since then, I've just moved on, because devices with keyboards
because they're
just
going
aren't
extinct.
up to spec with the ones without.
People
and I've
still
learned
ask
to
me,
live
though.
with it.
And
But that tactile feedback, we're tactile
It's
people.
great.
That's why we have fingers. That's why we can feel stuff.
And it's satisfying in a way
we need
that a
that.
touchscreen is not. And I still break out, don't make fun of me, I still break out the Veer every so often. And it has the tiniest keyboard ever, but that key response is so clicky. And it's just so satisfying in a way that a touchscreen can't be. Sibin also, by the way, just by way of note, I just got the Jelly Bean update for my Galaxy S3, and I was wondering if you could ask Anton if he's still waiting for his.
No, I got it actually 2 weeks ago. It turns out that my Galaxy S3 was a UK unit, so I got it the moment they started rolling out the UK Jelly Bean update.
Well, congratulations, Tony. I am still waiting for my Jelly Bean update
Well,
on my Verizon
if the rumors are
Galaxy
true, you'll be
S3.
waiting until 2013.
I know, and you know what? I'm done waiting. I'm just done. Joe, are you running Jelly Bean on your device over there? Of course you are. One of your 4 Galaxy Nexuses.
All of the Nexi are running Jelly Bean. The Nexus 7, of course, is running Jelly Bean. I think the Motorola Zoom is running Jelly Bean.
He's now waiting for 4.2.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Waiting.
Sibin, thank you for the letter. He says, as always, keep up the good work and have a nice day. Sibin, you have a good day too. I'm sorry if I did end up butchering your name. Thank you for the letter. And finally, one from William, who says, I've been using my iPad 1, since the launch. I've been using it as a computer with iWork. I only use it like that because I cannot afford a laptop. And now I have budget for laptop, about the price of a MacBook Air. I'm wondering if that is a smart decision to carry on buying tablets as a laptop replacement. All I do is surfing the web, using apps, playing simple games, and doing some homework. But now with the iPad mini coming, I'm wondering if the iPad mini is going to suit my needs better than the iPad, since it has a lower powered processor, or I guess as well as the iPad, it means. So what, in your opinion, is the best suiting product out of the three categories for my needs? Thank you. By the way, love your podcasts. Thank you, William. Guys, this is an interesting question to me because I was in a Starbucks yesterday writing an article, and an old woman was kind of walking around in a friendly manner, hassling people about what computers they were using because she was in the market for a computer. And the girl behind me was using an iPad with a keyboard dock, and the woman's like, now, what is that? And, the girl was like, well, it's an iPad with a keyboard, and this is what... And she, oh, well, I could do that. I could buy a tablet instead and save some money and have a keyboard attachment. And I feel like this is the question of 2012. It's going to be the question of 2013. It was sort of the question of 2011. Do I need to buy a laptop? Or should I buy a tablet and try and make that my primary device? For William specifically, for a user who says specifically, all I do is surfing the web, using apps, playing simple games, and doing some homework, I don't see why a computer is necessary. Do you?
For those of us who don't know, what is iWork?
iWork is Apple's suite of so-called office applications.
So we're not talking remote desktop type stuff.
No. It's just
this is apps.
word processing, spreadsheets, and presentations.
In tablet form. So, I mean...
On the tablet.
Yeah, on the tablet, right. So, I mean, William seems to be the prototypical case of a customer who doesn't need a computer, who's one of these millions of people who are buying tablets in lieu of buying a laptop or a notebook or a netbook, or an ultrabook or a netbook. So, I mean, William, just from my perspective, it sounds like you are the perfect case to buy a tablet, and I think you should stick with the full size because I think, as we just discussed with the iPad mini, the second iteration of the mini is going to be better, and even though it's less portable, the bigger version will probably serve you better, particularly if you're using a keyboard dock with it. But what is... Go ahead, Tony.
Let me clear up his second question. I agree. If that's all you do, then it's not necessary for you to buy a MacBook Air or any other laptop for that reason.
Agreed, yeah.
Now, since iWork is pages, numbers, and keynotes, as I said, there's not a huge difference in doing this particular things which you are doing between the full-sized iPad and the iPad mini. Yes, the iPad mini has a slower processor. It's still faster than the iPad 1 you are using. So
significantly.
It's the iPad 1, it's the iPad mini, and then it's the iPad 3. The iPad 3 is the fastest among all, but just for a comparison's sake, the iPad 1 has the same resolution as the iPad mini, but the iPad mini has a faster processor, so it will drive those applications faster. It will be slower than the iPad 3, of course, but for word processing, homeworks, slide games, and web browsing, you're better off with an iPad mini if portability is your thing. If you don't care about a full-size tablet, go with the iPad 2 or 3 or 4.
Just make sure your eyes are good, yeah.
Now, as far as accessories for keyboards and whatnot, have we seen any keyboard accessories for the iPad mini yet? Or are we still looking at...
You can use any Apple Bluetooth keyboard to connect to your tablet.
Right, but if...
Sure,
is there
absolutely.
One
but if you want to go with like a case, like the Logitech that is a hardback case / keyboard.
No.
We don't have any of those for the
No,
mini yet.
we have some docks, but we don't have that form.
Well, we've got, and this is something brand new from yesterday from this company called Padax, or Padacs, seems to have a Rubata mini case that includes a keyboard and a battery for the iPad mini. But this is brand new. Like this story is from yesterday that I'm looking at. So I don't know if there's a pre-production version I'm looking at. I think there's no question that many of these are coming. And you'll have a lot of options. So, we'll I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But it's a good question. I look forward to seeing more and more tablets with keyboard docks out in public and as people kind of make this decision, because it's cool to save money, and it's cool to save money and also get something that maybe you didn't expect to work as a full-time replacement. It's not for everyone. As much as I love tablets and mobiles, I would just die if I didn't have an actual computer to use.
Yeah, because you do videos and photo editing and video editing and stuff like that.
Even just for browsing, sometimes I just want to be like, okay, I'm tired of moving my hand around so much. I just want to I want to maintain the keyboard and mouse, touchpad paradigm. For sometimes it's just more comfortable. So I get it. It's whatever. It's
William, let us know what your decision is and
Please
what you
do.
have purchased.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that this is exactly what Microsoft is trying to figure out with
the Surface.
their Windows 8 and Windows RT.
Yeah.
All of that is it a desktop computer or is it a tablet? And OS limitations of both and what they're trying to do. So make sure you at least look at those articles as we continue to write them on Pocketnow, because we don't know. The industry doesn't know exactly how to do it yet. You're asking a question that the biggest minds in the industry are still trying to figure out how to get it right. I'm with the opinion of these guys. What it sounds like you're doing right now, keep doing what you're doing. A tablet's going to be better for battery life and portability, and you've already proven it works for you. So don't mess with what works.
And wrapping this up, because I know we're going to wrap this up, I have one thing to add. I'm going to give you guys some homework. If we call the phablets because they are between the smartphones and the tablets, how should we call the Surface, which is between the laptop and the tablet? Are those
Tap Top? That's my vote.
CompuTab?
CompuTab sounds like a sweet 1980s sci-fi gadget. Yes.
Or something that old Steve Ballmer would have announced.
No, it's CompuTab.
With reverse C.
Hey, Michael, can we find that video, just that advertisement for, what was it, Windows 1.0?
Windows 1.0, yeah.
I have embedded it
in the article.
I have embedded it in the Windows Phone ad with Steve Ballmer.
Oh, we've got to put that in there. If you haven't seen this commercial, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I'll throw it in the podcast post, Tony, if that's all right with you. And
sure.
Yeah, listeners, if you haven't seen this commercial, please do watch it. But we have to wrap it up because we're so far over time that it's just ridiculous. Gentlemen, anything further?
No, it would be a time waster, and we already have our comments on the length of our podcast.
We do. It's so long. Joe?
But it's quality. It's all quality.
We hope so.
And for the sake of all of those who think it's too long,
jump around.
That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Yeah, and this is an exception. This is both quantity and quality.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And modesty.
And
modesty.
Well, modesty to a full extent.
And hats.
Hats in the buffer. That's what the show is going to be called from now on. Guys, that wraps it up for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. Feel free to tweet at us. Most of us are pretty active on the Twitter sphere, even though Joe Levi has been delinquent in his live tweeting of the podcast recently. I guess real life is getting in the way. What's that?
One.
No,
I
one.
only missed
Just one. Well, all right,
One, if I remember well.
Right. Tony over there is at Anton D. Nagy, ANTONDNAGY. Joe is at Joe Levi, JOELEVI. And you can find me at Captain 2 Phones, Captain the number 2 Phones. Follow Pocketnow's official Twitter account at Pocketnow Tweets. Follow us on Facebook and Google+. Leave us a review on iTunes or Zune if you like the podcast. And if you have a topic, question, or suggestion for the podcast, or you just want to say hi, email us at podcast@pocketnow.com. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Ciao.
Have a great day.